Welcome to another episode of the Practitioner's Edge, the small firm suite with the FICPA. And I am Dan Henn, CPA, CTR, coming to you again with another special guest here. I have Andy Roe with CPA Site Solutions. So welcome to the show today, Andy.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yep, I'm Andy Roe. I'm the CRO of CPA Site Solutions. I cover our sales, I cover our implementation, and our customer service organization for our company.
Because we love our acronyms, can you tell me what a CRO is?
A chief revenue officer. So basically, I'm responsible for the client experience with our organization.
So that's good to know. I just always like to get those kind of things clear because a CRO is one of the ones I haven't heard before, but I like that. I like Chief Revenue Officer. It's kind of like the what is it? I heard the Chief Client Happy Person, something of that. I forget what I heard somebody do one time. But anyway, thank you for being here, Andy, and let's go ahead and get into finding out who you are, what you're about. Tell us more about CPA Site Solutions. The first question I have for you in 60 seconds or less, tell us a little bit more about yourself. What's your passion? Why did you get involved with CPA Site Solutions?
Yeah, for over 20 years, I've been working with a small business community, and really because of that, it's meant I've worked very heavily with accounting firms across the country, helping them grow and modernize how they attract and communicate with their clients. And I think what excites me the most is with small firms, helping them compete with larger organizations. Small firms, in my opinion, often have to deliver the most personalized service and experience, but they don't always have the time or resources to invest in things like marketing or communication tools or technology. And so I get really passionate about these conversations talking about firm growth with organizations across the country, and especially with Florida today.
So let's take it a little step further then. How would you explain if you were at a networking function talking to a CPA? What would you tell them in your 30-second sort of elevator speech as far as what you offer with CPA Site Solutions?
CPA Site Solutions, real simply, we help accounting firms grow by giving them tools to attract new clients, communicate better with existing ones, and run their firm more efficiently. We provide websites, communication tools, education content, marketing resources, and automation specifically designed for accounting firms.
So super, that's great. Then as far as what is the origin story of CPA Site Solutions? The company's been around a long time. I've heard of CPA Site Solutions as a practitioner for years. Actually looked into them when I first started my own practice. But the question that we like to ask is who got bit by the radioactive spider or the gamma rays turned into the Hulk that became this superhero and turned CPA Site Solutions to be a tool resource for CPAs and other tax professionals?
Yeah, I love the superhero reference. I guess I'm a late joining Avenger since I've only been with the company for less than a year. Really, as I understand it, it was really designed by CPAs who identified that you go to school, you get your accounting degree, you pass your CPA certification, but especially I think it's a little different modern day. They don't really necessarily teach you how to grow and operate your business on your own. Our founders found a gap in the marketplace that said most CPA firms don't have an internal marketing team. They don't have an internal sales team. A lot of that burden of proof falls on themselves. And especially in the modern age, they don't have web developers. Clients are increasingly researching their accounts online, and that's where we can help step in, even if they've been referred into that practice.
Yeah, no, the biggest challenge from a marketing perspective, marketing is being seen and obviously being heard. And the simple, easiest thing that a CPA could do is to have a website. That's the simple, easiest thing, but it's not cheap, especially back in the day. It would cost 2, 3 thousand or more if you hired a web developer and they were coding in HTML5 or doing something like that. And so you guys found a good way to, even from the cookie cutter perspective, something is better than nothing, is my opinion. And you do that. And, but the problem ends up being is we have that sort of set it and forget it type of mentality because of being so busy. I want to ask you then from the product or service that you guys offer, what, because obviously you put the cookie cutter together. What other services do you wrap around some of that? Again, high level, we'll get into some more of the details as we go on, but what are the higher level tools and resources do you add to that as part of CPA Site Solutions?
Yeah, I think the first thing is a personal touch. I think there's a lot of times, especially this time of year, we're always guilty of that. Sometimes we don't take the advice that we give to our own employees or we give to our own clients. And so recently I was talking to a firm, one of our clients who was looking to refresh. They haven't really got on the phone with us in a couple of months. As they were looking at that book of business, they were really thinking about, okay, is my book of business what I originally visioned for my practice all these years ago? And does my website really convey the type of clients that we really want to attract? So the first thing that happens in our onboarding experience is we ask you those series of questions, right? What is the focus of your practice? What are the type of customers you're looking to attract? What are the type of products you're trying to offer? And just very basic things that I think a lot of times, especially during this busy season, you get wrapped up in doing the work and you're not sitting down and analyzing each client visit you have and saying, does this fit in with my own practice's mission and vision? And then we scale all the way up to that design feature to Facebook advertising, communication tools. We have some AI chat products, online payment methods, everything to just, again, get that virtual banner for your firm out there to really helping you modernize to the client expectation of today.
Okay, super. When you work with small accounting firms specifically, what's the most common challenge that you see them have?
Yeah, I think of themes. I think the first one is burnout. I think firms want to grow, but a lot of times they're operating at capacity. Now, obviously, I'm talking the end of the market where they've been established for a while. Maybe you talked about they have a website, they set it and forget it. They have a group of clients and maybe they're hesitant about expanding staff, but they haven't really taken a step back and analyzed that book of business. What is the margin on this business? Has it energized myself and also my firm? I think the second thing is rising client expectations. We all know when we go to check in for any sort of medical type appointment, there's an app, there's a portal, you have to sign the HIPAA agreement, upload it, you have to put in the insurance card. And usually a lot of times they're not even taking payment when you get there. The expectation is you're taking the copay before or even after. Clients are now expecting that across all their other service providers that they have in the market, and especially with their accounting firm. And then probably the third thing is I think visibility. Even when someone is referred, you think about if you relocated to a town. I know you're in Florida, right? I've moved in a couple times in Florida. When you get to Florida, you ask about your favorite restaurant, if I'm going to take that example. And nowadays, you just don't go drive to it. You're going to take a second, you're going to look up the restaurant, you're going to see the menu, you're going to look at the reviews, you're going to see their online visibility. Now, that same type of buying behavior that happens actually happens for you as an accounting firm. They're going to go through that same type of digital buying journey that they do just for that restaurant.
Right, yeah, that's the thing that I think a lot of tax professionals don't focus on is we focus on the dealing with the client, we know the marketing, we know that all that stuff up front, getting the work done, but that last piece, asking for that review or testimonial is so key, so important because I use it myself. If I go travel, I'm going to look at the hotel or if I'm looking at one of those short-term rental sites, I'm going to look at reviews for those types of things. You mentioned restaurants is another key one. And they do, I have heard many a person who's come to me when I had my practice that said, "Hey, I came to you because you had good reviews." Now, did I have perfect reviews? No. And you shouldn't expect perfect reviews because you're going to get one crap one every once in a while. And it's all in how you handle it and respond to it. It's no different than you get a bad experience with a client, even if it's something you screwed up. It's all in how you handle it because if you at least try to make it right, most people can give you some grace with that. Thank you. That's actually a very important part. Just along those lines, then, does CPA Site Solutions allow them to gather that or show it on their sites outside of them having to go to the Google My Review page?
100%. And that's something we encourage, right? Everything from, I even noticed your own site, you had a video testimonial there. Great best practice because it's one of those things that if you don't, we talk to people like, I don't think I have reviews. And the answer is yes, you have reviews on yourself or your firm. You just might not be aware of those. And if you're not helping control the narrative, and more importantly, highlighting, like I talk about, don't keep yourself a secret because you're right. We're going to continue that restaurant analogy. They might have a bad day, they might have a bad service, but it's about how you respond. Even if you're going on there and just having a response and acknowledging it and helping people along, that goes a long way because people understand that. Now, don't keep yourself a secret, right? Get those clients that you know you've helped. It's going to help the visibility probably of their own businesses. Most people love to be featured in a positive review on their sites. And that's one of the things we can help with that strategy of how to grow your firm.
Super. So the next question I have for you, Andy, is what's the biggest misconception small firm owners have about what you guys do in CPA Site Solutions? Primarily, obviously, the website. You mentioned to me before we started talking about that you guys do marketing as well. What is the biggest misconception they have?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just about the it's going to be super expensive. It's going to be a huge investment. And I always like, I'm not an accountant, I'm not a CPA. So I always try to put things in my light. It would be about the first time that I went into a CPA firm, and there's a nervousness about engaging and what is this going to mean? How much time? And then you really get in there and you figure out that they're your advocate, they're your business advisor, they're your trusted person to talk about growing your business. And that's very true with an organization like us, that because usually it's a lot about simple communication, right? Making sure that if you want to focus on construction, does your website really show that? Are you talking about things that, whether it's pieces of article or content, again, going back to restaurants, does restaurants, are you talking about FICA tip credit report, shortfall reports, TEFRA, and track the things that if somebody went to your website screams that I'm knowledgeable, I'm an expert in this industry or where you want to go, and it's going to make them more likely to do a call of action. And some of those simple things, we think about all the things that are on the news that people have questions about and where they want to get their information. I've been dealing with the professional accounting community for over 20 years, and there's always studies that come out right year over year about what is the most trusted advisor for that small business. And the accounting professional is always in the top right, usually in the top two, if not number one, but always in the top three. You want to make sure that when somebody talks about something in a speech or that law gets passed, you want them to be able to come to you, or you want to be sending that information to them, updating them of what that pending legislation change is going to mean for them.
Right. And I think the key word that you used, Andy, was is simple because we always love to complicate our lives as much as we see our clients do it all the time. And it's almost a natural progression. We make more money, we invest in more things, we do more things, and it makes sense. Like I said earlier, a website is actually a very key piece early on. Can you give me a practical example or success story on how a small firm uses your resources and tools that you guys have to offer?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was thinking about this before I came in. I jumped on a call a couple of months ago with a client we had in the Baltimore area. And so he had joined us 2 years ago, and his practice was a little more mature and he wanted some updating. He was thinking about his sons were in college, his sons in his mind were going to come into business and eventually take over that. So he wanted a refresh. So he updated his website, started to attract some different type of clientele. He ended up getting some awards in the Baltimore area for being
Wow.
one of the best tax practitioners, which was great. And then he reached back out to us because he started looking at the age and the maturity of his client base. He started thinking about that next level. Now that I really have the visibility of my practice, as the sons were now out of college and now we're working for the firm, he was really thinking about that kind of retirement stage and moving, kind of handing it off. He was looking at the base of clients he was going to leave as a legacy. He realized he wanted to attract not one, more of growing organizations to his practice, but also a very specific type of entrepreneurs where he could get into more of an advisory type of a practice. He started doing more investing with some advertising, both on social media with us and also some SEO services, which is really simple. You type in best restaurant accounting firm in the Baltimore area, where you're going to pop up below the advertising in that Google rankings. And I've kept an eye on him, and it's really been impressive to see how his service grows.
Yeah, that's cool when you see that. Obviously, that there's a lot of tips and tricks in regarding SEO and keywords and doing all those fun things on a website. And I think you mentioned it earlier about the if you're going to niche or specialize, niching obviously in an industry like toward doctors, you mentioned construction, to restaurants, to auto mechanics, whoever it is that you're doing, you want to make sure that your site talks to them. Or for that matter, it's so easy to go get another domain name or forward it to another site and get a site that is specifically for them, as well as the type of work that you do. I specialize in the representation of collections and exam, and that's what my site says. That kind of work. There are people who deal with foreign ones, as well as all different types of areas of tax that we deal with. The next question that I have for you is what's one solution actually, what's one thing your solution does that people are usually surprised to learn about that usually gets the biggest reaction from?
I think simple communication tools, I referenced that a little bit, but things like client newsletters, tax alerts, blog content, automation reminders. I think of going back to the tax and regulation alerts. They allow firms to quickly share updates to the clients, to have written content themselves, and that can just make a huge advantage as far as their marketplace and competitors.
Are you talking about that you also create some newsletters and emails for the communication aspect for CPAs to use?
Absolutely.
Obviously, it goes along with the marketing aspect of things. And for me, I always love the done for you kind of stuff that I just have to look and review and edit because I always say it's so much easier and quicker to review something than it is to create something. Now, obviously, AI changes that a little bit to a certain degree, but it's still creating it and you're still having to review it. That brings me into kind of an ancillary question that usually a lot of people like to know is in what ways do you guys incorporate AI in what you're doing and offering?
Yeah, no, great question. We have a lot of AI behind the scenes that helps as far as just the performance of all our technology. But we actually just released something within the last year, an AI chat feature that really gets on your website that not only helps client education, but just really especially this time of year, you're talking about freeing your front desk. And for the expectation of clients who want some instant answers, whether they're really browsing, right, looking at the window dressing, figuring out if they're going to raise their hand and come into the shop, they can quickly get some answers to satisfy their buying journey so they can do that call of action into you.
Does it come preloaded with some information and then we have to give you more information to make it smarter, better to answer for our specific type of client base or prospect base?
It's all integrated with a website. So that's a big thing when we talk about when we have new customers or customers who actually want to add the AI chat feature is we take a look at all the different landing pages on your site and the different content to make sure that the content material is there. And so when it does crawl your website to be able to give answers, because the patience of our buyers today just are not great, right? If they can't get on the website and find what they want in a couple of seconds, the most likely thing they're going to do is they're going to abandon and go someplace else even if they're a current customer of yours. The AI chatbot really helps speed up that curiosity to get them that answer instantaneously.
Super. Yeah, that makes complete sense with using AI and doing a bunch of different things there. My next question for you is what's one resource, tip, best practice that you wish every small firm knew?
I'd probably say that consistent client education, I think, is incredibly powerful. I think about, especially if you're a firm who maybe they got a lot of their clientele by saying we do everything and everything is really broad. And so as their clients change or think about opening up a different type of business or expand, maybe they don't even know if that like if you're more of a generalist. They don't even necessarily know they want to come to you. It can lead to some client abandonment, possibly some churn issues. We regularly help firms with helping to share information from the client experience, asking better questions, even when they expand their own services.
Yeah, and I think the key that you mentioned is the key word is consistency. Most business owners fail at this, including CPAs, tax professionals, that consistency is the key. Just keeping that snowball rolling down the hill. If you don't, you're pushing it up the hill and it takes much more
Mhm.
work to deal with it there. What's a mistake you see even experienced practitioners make in your area that's costing them real time or money or both?
It's always this term I talk about is treating the website like it's a brochure, like it's a static object that's supposed to live on your front desk for years, possibly even decades, and realizing that that's something that should always be looked at least on a quarterly basis. Even if it's just simple design things, like you mentioned, just are words bolded, the color purple, is it pictures? It can be things about if maybe you talked about back in the day of standing up your own website, maybe there's an old image that was localized and takes a long time to load, and you think about the expectation of speed and performance. And when someone goes on your site and the picture is not rendering and they're like, "If they can't even take care of their website, how are they going to take care of my financials?" You think about a website should be a client resource center, a marketing engine, and a referral validator, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's very true. Without naming names, can you walk us through a firm that came to you with a challenge and what things look like in a transformational state of, say, somewhere between 3, 6 months, a year? What does that look like for a firm that comes to you and uses CPA Site Solutions?
Yeah, I think in general, number one, it's all about, how quickly they want to go. We do have some people who want to do a total transformation and they want to do everything at one time and completely upgrade their website and their advertising, their clientele, and that's great. We can help them for that. On the other side, we do have a lot of people who want to take more of, I'd say, more of a gradual kind of conservative approach. I always say starting at the website, because it's probably something that hasn't been updated in a while. Even looking at, you mentioned that the domain name, and certainly I think in accounting history, there's a history of the partner like alphabet soup of everybody's last name and then just having .com, and even the top line domain names have changed and get more specialized now out there in the marketplace. I was talking about, okay, let's take a look at your practice and what do you want to be in a couple of years? What type of clients do you want to serve? Are you looking to specialize in? Now, let's just get that digital brochure, right? Not the physical brochure, but the digital brochure. Make sure it's updated. It is who you are, where you're really satisfied that. Now let's get in some communication tools, whether it's client education, is it payments, is it vault storage, really can make that client experience feel really more modern. And then you have like kind of the ultimate tiers. I really want to crank up that new client acquisition because maybe you had to offboard some of those clients that weren't as high margin business and you want to attract that new, more profitable clientele. And one of the things I hear a lot, especially some of the conferences that I go across the country, are some of the top issues that, people are facing as a firm is right. We talked about revenue, clients, growing your practice, kind of all that number one bucket. And the second thing is staffing concerns. And I think there can be some underestimation about when you're trying to hire or retain your staff of putting all these things together. Is the work they're doing energizing? If you're having a hard time hiring somebody, think about, for a lot of people, how they go through a hiring journey. They're going to look at the website and they're going to make a lot of assumptions about their potential employer based on what that looks like.
Then let me ask you another question because I know this is probably a question in somebody's mind because it would have been in mine if I were looking for this. But I've already got a site, I've already got a domain name. Is it easy for you guys to deal with that and handling all the behind the scenes technical aspect of that? Because as I've found, I tend to be very fairly technical. I've shared that I grew up with a computer on my desk, even at my age of 30 years of experience, and I've had a computer on my desk since I was 10. I was fortunate that my dad was in a business with that. I'm more technically inclined, and I've found that many tax professionals are not. There's a lot of the behind the scenes dealing with the DNS and doing all that with the host domain stuff. Do you handle a lot of that? And is it easy for me to, with my domain name, to come and start using your site?
The simple answer is yes. We don't want any of your listeners, if they don't already know about that and they're not interested in learning about that, we don't want them to worry about that. We'll take care of that. We try to make it as simple as just contact us at CPA Site Solutions, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Certainly, we're here because of the FICPA Small Firm Suite program, but it is just really simple. I think you're going to have this really hard to believe. We actually have quite a few people we work with on a monthly basis that have been in business for decades that don't have a website at all. They're just not technology proficient whatsoever. And finally, they've come to that point, right? For whatever it is in their firm, they're finally getting a website for the first time and they have no idea like at all about how to go about it. And they're just calling us for help and we just take it from there.
Super. Now, do you also give advice and recommendations in terms of their actual domain name? Is there reasons that somebody would want to change a domain name?
There can be. Certainly, I'm always going to say I'm not an expert here in the state of Florida, so always check with your state associations and make sure there are some guidelines that you got to go follow. But we do find a lot of people, some people have a URL, which I think you mentioned, that is almost like a doing business as. It
Right.
has to be about, again, is it simple? Is it memorable? Does it really speak to who you want to be? And we help them with all that stuff.
Super. Is there anything that we didn't cover today that you want to add for small business owners about CPA Site Solutions or anything else in general, general?
Yeah, I would just say I know we talked about it a lot, but I want to just keep it real simple is that small incremental changes can make a big difference for you and your firm. And so you don't have to do everything. We don't have to boil the ocean. It can be as simple as you jump on a call with us. We can do a digital marketing review. We can show you examples of some of our standard websites. We can show you some examples of high performing websites from different parts of the country and have you make your own opinion about what's best for you and your business.
Boil the ocean. That's a new one that I haven't heard. I'm always the eat the elephant kind of person.
Absolutely.
Obviously, not that I ever advocate eating an elephant, but the principle is obviously you've got one big thing and you're going to bite it at one bite, take one bite at a time. Brian Tracy was I guess, one of the ones who coined the eating the frog approach. And there are times
Yeah.
when you need to swallow the frog in one bite. But I believe that if we can take because a website is not a huge project, but it's not a necessarily a swallow the frog project either. Take it in little bite size and pieces, and if you look at it as part of one cog of your whole marketing wheel, if you will, your system of marketing, yeah, then I think that's an actual key, very important part. So the thing that I'm going to end here with for you, Andy, is this. What's a book, podcast, or resource that's had a real impact on you or the way that you think or do and operate that you like to share?
Yeah, that's a good one. On my bookshelf, besides eating the elephant with all my Auburn paraphernalia back there, I'm a big fan of eating the elephant, obviously. But I think for me, there's a book that talks about asking for referrals. And I've been in the business for a long time, started my roots in selling. And I think for now it's just progressed to the digital age. You mentioned Brian Tracy. There's a lot of great authors that are out there that talk about the most general, the general premise of if you're dealing with a client who you think's valuable, asking them a simple question of who is a business like yours that could use a service like ours, right? If you feel that I'm doing a good job with our goods and services, who else can I reach out to that I could also help? And I think a lot of times, especially in the accounting community, what I find is they're a really good trusted advisor for their clients, but sometimes they don't take that own advice for themselves and their firm, and they get wrapped up in the cycle of accounting, right? Getting ready for tax season and the continuing education. Then you have tax season, then you have the summer break, then you have extensions, and it just all of a sudden that cycle starts over again. And just it's almost giving all the listeners permission to take a second and do that same type of goal setting exercise for yourselves that you're probably asking your clientele to do right over the next couple of months.
Yeah, I always say that sometimes we are our own worst client because whether it's not focusing on, the marketing, if it's I know many of a tax professional who is doing their tax return on October the 14th, trying to get their own tax returns done. Yeah, so I totally know how it's the do as I say, not as I do approach. And then coming back to something that you said earlier in regard to the asking for things. You had mentioned earlier, Andy, about asking for referrals. That I mentioned about reading a book about that. That's one of the hardest things that many tax professionals have. We talked earlier about testimonials and reviews, asking for those, asking for reviews. It's always an awkward thing. And the thing that I would put out there to practitioners is just to push yourself a little bit. And you'd be surprised because we're always afraid that whether it's we don't want to know what the review might be, because we think it might be bad. But I guarantee you, if you ask, probably 9 times out of 10, at least, it's a positive review, and it's probably more glowing than you think. And in asking for referrals, if you don't ask, you don't get. And especially when it's people that you like. When they always say that the birds of a feather flock together. And so if you like that client, chances are you're going to find more people that are like them. And if they're paying good fees, they listen to what you do, they bring their stuff on time. Why don't you want more of those? And we tend to get a lot more potluck type of stuff. But with that, any other parting questions, comments, anything that you else have to want to share with us?
I just say you don't need a big marketing team to grow your firm. The right tools, consistent communication with clients. Small firms can compete with anybody. And just appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Well, thank you again, Andy. I appreciate you taking your time to be with us today. I think this is very important. A website is an actual very important part of the marketing cog in the marketing system. And you guys actually add a few other pieces, as you mentioned, in terms of some advertising, Facebook related stuff, email, creating some newsletter type documents and things that you'd mentioned. I appreciate you taking the time. And if you're interested in learning more about CPA Site Solutions, the information will be below in the show notes. And with that, Andy, thank you for being here today, our special guest of Andy Roe with CPA Site Solutions. With that, I want to thank you guys for being here, tuning in this week, and for the Practitioner's Edge of the FICPA Small Firm Suite. Dan Henn, CPA, CTR, signing off, and you have a great rest of your day.